Hey everyone, welcome back to VeloView, your ultimate pit stop for everything on wheels. Today we're diving deep into one of the most iconic names in automotive history, the Mazda MX-5. Now before you scratch your head and say, wait, the MX-5 didn't exist in 1960, you're absolutely right. The first MX-5 was officially launched in 1989. But in this video, we're going to imagine what a 1960 Mazda MX-5 would have been like, not just as a car, but as a symbol of what driving passion meant in that golden age of motoring. Think of this as a journey into an alternate timeline, where Mazda created its masterpiece 3 decades earlier and brought the spirit of the lightweight roadster to life in the 1960s. The 1960s were a magical era for cars. It was the decade when driving became about emotion and experience rather than just transport. The British were at the forefront of lightweight sports cars with legends like the MG Midget, Austin Healey Sprite, and the Lotus Elan. These cars were small, simple, and fun. They didn't need big engines or flashy looks to make drivers smile. If Mazda had entered that world in 1960 with an MX-5, it would have been a game changer, combining British driving charm with Japanese engineering precision and reliability. Mazda was still a young company back then, but the philosophy that would later define the brand, simplicity, balance, and driver connection, was already forming. So, let's imagine what that 1960 Mazda MX-5 would look like. Picture a petite two-seater convertible with smooth, rounded lines, a long bonnet, short tail, and perfect proportions. Chrome bumpers, round headlamps, wire-spoke wheels, and a soft top that folds neatly behind the seats. Its design wouldn't scream for attention, but it would turn heads because of its elegance and purity. Every curve would be functional, every detail intentional. You wouldn't find sharp creases or exaggerated bends, just a clean, timeless design that looked as good parked outside a cafe as it did racing down a country road. Under that beautifully sculpted bonnet, this 1960 MX-5 would likely carry a small displacement 4-cylinder engine, something around 1.2 or 1.3 liters, delivering maybe 70 horsepower. That might not sound like much, but when the car weighs less than 900 kilograms, it's more than enough to make it lively. The beauty of such a machine wouldn't be in straight-line speed, but in how alive it felt on the road. The engine would sing through twin carburetors, producing a crisp exhaust note that echoed through mountain passes. The gearbox would be a short-throw 4-speed manual, mechanical and precise, connecting the driver to the drivetrain like few cars can today. Inside, simplicity would rule. The cabin would feature 2 snug leather seats, a wooden steering wheel, and a slim dashboard with only the essentials: a speedometer, tachometer, oil pressure, and fuel gauge. No power windows, no air conditioning, no unnecessary clutter. The philosophy would be clear: less weight, more connection. Everything you touch would feel raw and mechanical: the firm clutch, the solid metal gear lever, and the direct steering that responds instantly to your hands. The wind would rush past your ears, the smell of petrol and leather would fill the air, and every journey would feel like an adventure. In terms of driving dynamics, the car would follow the same principles that made the later MX-5 a legend: a front-engine, rear-wheel drive layout with near-perfect weight distribution. Suspension would likely be independent in the front with a live axle at the rear, keeping it playful yet predictable. Brakes would be drum-type, requiring skill and anticipation, adding to the sense of involvement. You wouldn't rely on electronics or driver aids, it would just be you, the machine, and the road. That raw mechanical connection is something modern cars often lack, but in 1960, it would have been the car's greatest gift to its driver. If we look at the performance numbers this car might have achieved, we're probably talking about a 0 to 60 miles per hour time around 11 to 12 seconds and a top speed close to 95 miles per hour. Not supercar territory by any means, but what mattered was how it felt getting there. The acceleration would be linear and responsive, the sound intoxicating, and the handling nimble. It would encourage you to push harder through corners, rewarding smooth inputs and punishing overconfidence. It would be a car that teaches you to drive, not just to steer. Now imagine how it would have been received in the 1960s. The British and Italians might have felt the heat from this Japanese newcomer. Mazda would have gained a global identity as a maker of pure drivers cars long before the RX-7 or the later MX-5 even existed. The 1960 Mazda MX-5 would have represented a new kind of sports car, one that combined reliability with passion, a car that you could drive daily yet still take on winding roads and feel alive. It would have been affordable too, making sports car ownership possible for the average enthusiast, not just the wealthy few. That accessibility is a big part of what made the real MX-5 so beloved later on. Visually, it would have been a piece of art, compact, balanced, and unmistakably soulful. The low stance, polished chrome, and the way sunlight reflects off its curved fenders would have made it irresistible to photographers and enthusiasts alike. The car would have been more than transportation, it would have been an expression of freedom and individuality. Imagine cruising through 1960s Tokyo or along the coastal roads of California in one, the world would simply blur away, leaving just you and the open road. Philosophically, the car would capture what Mazda would later describe as Jinba Itai, meaning horse and rider as one. Even though that phrase wasn't used yet, the idea was timeless, perfect harmony between driver and machine. Every movement, every shift, every corner would feel intuitive, as if the car was an extension of your body. That's the secret to why the MX-5 has remained so special for decades, and it's exactly what this 1960 version would have embodied. When we compare this imaginary 1960 model to its later successors, we realize how consistent Mazda's philosophy has been. The first production MX-5 in 1989 was a modern reinterpretation of the same ideals that defined those 1960s roadsters. Lightweight design, perfect balance, and the joy of pure driving, it's a formula that never grows old. The imagined 1960 MX-5 would have been a forerunner of this movement, proving that true driving pleasure isn't about technology or horsepower, but about soul. So, in the end, the 1960 Mazda MX-5, though it never existed, represents the dream of every car lover who values connection over speed, feeling over flash, and purity over complexity. It would have been the perfect symbol of freedom, youth, and passion in an era defined by mechanical beauty. The kind of car that made you smile just by looking at it, and grin uncontrollably the moment you drove it. A car that turned every drive into an experience and every owner into an enthusiast. Thanks so much for watching this deep dive journey into what the 1960 Mazda MX-5 might have been. If you enjoyed this review and love exploring automotive history and imagination, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with fellow car lovers, and most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to VeloView for more amazing car stories, classic reviews, and passionate takes from the world of motoring. Until next time, keep driving with heart and stay tuned for more from VeloView.